Welcome to the Brit Tales, a place where English learning meets storytelling. Here, every story is carefully designed for upper intermediate and advanced learners, guiding you through real conversations and natural phrases. You'll have the chance to practice listening, pronunciation, and vocabulary in one engaging experience, always supported by subtitles. Each tale focuses on modern British English expressions, the kind you'll hear in everyday conversations, making your practice both relevant and authentic. Through relatable stories about bold choices and life's challenges, you'll build the confidence to use English in real situations. Every story connects reading, listening, and speaking into one complete journey, giving you the balance every learner needs. And most importantly, it's a way to enjoy learning. Authentic stories designed in line with B2 and C1 CEFR levels so that progress feels natural, exciting, and truly rewarding. When you reach the point in your English learning where the basics are behind you, something changes. You begin to realize that English is not only about grammar exercises, vocabulary lists, or filling in the blanks on a worksheet. At an upper intermediate or advanced level, English starts to feel alive. It becomes a tool that connects you with real experiences, with the way people genuinely speak and interact. That is what this story is built for. It is designed not to sound like a textbook, but to sound like life. Every phrase, every line of dialogue, and every description in this story has been shaped with learners like you in mind. Learners who are ready to step into conversations that feel authentic, natural, and meaningful. Think about the kind of English you hear when you watch a film, listen to a podcast, or chat with someone who speaks fluently. It is not stiff or robotic. It flows, it adapts, it carries rhythm. Sometimes people use expressions that don't appear in grammar books. And sometimes the meaning is not in the individual words, but in the way those words are put together. This story takes you directly into that world. Instead of simply reading about phrases, you will hear them used in context, with tone, with emotion, and with purpose. That is the kind of practice that helps you not only understand English, but also feel it. For an advanced learner, the challenge is rarely about knowing the rules anymore. The challenge lies in capturing nuance. You want to know how to sound natural, how to respond in a way that feels confident, how to pick up on subtle humor, or how to express yourself without hesitation. This is where a story like this makes all the difference. By immersing yourself in dialogue that feels real, you begin to notice patterns. You notice how questions are asked casually, how people interrupt each other politely, how emotions show themselves not only through vocabulary, but through intonation. These small details are what lift your English from good to excellent. This story gives you a chance to practice without pressure. You can listen, pause, repeat, or shadow the speaker. You can read the subtitles and compare them to what you hear, strengthening both your listening and reading skills at the same time. When you meet phrases you don't know, you learn them naturally because they are tied to a character, an action, or a situation that makes sense. This is so much more effective than memorizing a random list of words. When language comes alive through a narrative, it sticks with you. Another powerful part of learning through story is empathy. As you follow the characters and the choices they make, you connect emotionally. That connection helps you remember. If a character feels nervous, excited, or hopeful, you feel it too, and the words attached to those emotions become part of your memory. This is how children learn their first language, through stories, experiences, and emotions. And at an advanced level, it is still one of the best ways to learn. What also makes this story valuable is that it brings you into the world of British English as it is spoken today. You will not only hear clear pronunciation, but also modern expressions that are genuinely used. That means you are not only learning English, You are learning how to communicate like someone who lives and breathes it daily. This is the kind of exposure that builds confidence because you know the phrases you are learning are real, not outdated or artificial. And so, when you engage with this story, you are not just practicing English, you are stepping into conversation. You are preparing yourself for the real world of language, where confidence matters just as much as accuracy, and where your voice can finally sound as natural as the words on the page. This is why this story exists, to guide you into real conversation and natural phrases, the kind of English that moves beyond lessons and becomes a part of your life. When you think about learning a language, it is easy to focus on one skill at a time. Sometimes you sit down with a vocabulary list, other times you practice pronunciation drills, and at other times you try to improve your listening by watching videos or listening to songs. But what if you could bring all of these together in one single activity? That is exactly what happens when you learn through storytelling with subtitles. A story has the power to weave listening, pronunciation, and vocabulary practice into one seamless experience, and that is what makes it so effective. Listening is often the skill that learners find most frustrating. You may read English very well and even write with confidence, but when it comes to following a conversation, things suddenly feel fast and complicated. That is because real English does not pause for you to catch up. It moves with rhythm, tone, and speed. Stories with subtitles give you the chance to slow down and take control. You can hear the natural flow of the words, then look at the subtitles to confirm what you heard, and finally repeat as many times as you need. Over time, your ear begins to adjust, and what once felt impossible starts to feel familiar. Pronunciation, too, becomes easier when you work with a story. Instead of repeating isolated sounds or practicing words without context, you hear them as they are truly spoken. You can copy not only the sounds, but also the intonation, the stress, and the melody of the sentences. When you shadow the lines of a character, you are doing more than just imitating. You are training your mouth and your voice to move in the rhythm of English. This kind of practice builds fluency far more quickly than drills alone, because it is natural and connected to meaning. You are not just saying sounds, you are saying something that matters within a story. Vocabulary grows in the same way. Lists of words are easy to forget, but words that belong to a character, to a situation, or to an emotional moment are hard to forget. When a character says something in a tense moment, that phrase stays with you. When a character uses a playful expression, it feels alive. Subtitles support this by showing you the exact spelling of the words, and you hear them, which helps you connect sound and meaning instantly. Each time a phrase repeats in the story, your brain strengthens that connection until it becomes part of your own usable English. The beauty of storytelling is that it engages you fully. You are not only studying, you are experiencing. You care about what happens next. You follow the emotions, and you naturally absorb the language along the way. That engagement is what makes you forget you are practicing. Instead of thinking, I am learning, you find yourself thinking, I want to know what happens next. In that process, your listening sharpens, your pronunciation strengthens, and your vocabulary expands almost without effort. This is why practicing English through engaging stories with subtitles is so powerful. It allows you to combine 3 essential skills at once in a way that feels enjoyable rather than forced. You do not need to divide your time into separate tasks. One story gives you the chance to listen, to speak, and to learn new words, all while being entertained. That is the true value of this method. It transforms learning into something natural, memorable, and effective. One of the biggest challenges for learners at the upper intermediate and advanced levels is not just understanding English, but understanding the kind of English that people actually use every single day. It is one thing to learn textbook phrases, but it is something else entirely to be able to sit in a cafe in London, hear people chatting at the next table, and truly follow along without confusion. That is why the focus here is on modern British English expressions and phrases that you will hear in everyday conversations. The kind of English that is alive right now, not frozen in an old lesson or a grammar book. When you listen to this story, you are not only following a narrative, you are stepping into a world where language feels current, natural, and relevant. You hear expressions that people genuinely say, whether they are talking to friends, describing how they feel, or reacting to unexpected situations. This is important because, as a learner, you don't just want to sound correct. You want to sound natural. The difference between saying something correct and saying something natural can be small, but it has a huge impact on how confident you feel and how others respond to you. Take, for example, the difference between formal textbook language and casual spoken English. A textbook might tell you to say, "I do not agree with you," but in a real conversation, you are far more likely to hear, "I'm not so sure about that," or even, "I don't really think so." Both are correct, but one feels authentic in daily life. This story is filled with those kinds of authentic phrases, which you can pick up and start using immediately. They will help you not only understand others more easily, but also give you the confidence to join in without worrying that you sound unnatural or too formal. Another benefit of focusing on modern expressions is that it keeps your English fresh. Languages change over time. New words appear, old ones fade, and sometimes familiar words take on new meanings. British English especially is full of playful expressions, humor, and subtle differences that textbooks often overlook. When you practice through a story that is written for today, you are practicing with the living version of language, not one that feels outdated. That way, when you speak, you sound like someone who belongs in the present, not the past. Listening to characters use these expressions also teaches you how to understand the meaning behind the words. Many British English phrases cannot be translated literally because their meaning comes from culture, tone, or shared context. For example, an expression like "I'm gutted" does not mean someone's stomach has been empty. It simply means they are very disappointed. Without exposure to real usage, expressions like this can be confusing. But when you hear them in the middle of a story, with emotion and situation to guide you, the meaning becomes clear and it stays with you. What makes this even more powerful is the chance to practice with subtitles. As you hear a phrase spoken, you can see it written, which helps you connect sound to spelling and meaning. You may even choose to repeat it out loud, copying the rhythm and intonation. That is how you move from simply recognizing an expression to being able to use it yourself with the same natural flow. In the end, learning modern British English expressions through story gives you more than vocabulary. It gives you confidence. It helps you step into conversations knowing that you can understand and be understood. It lets you connect not only with the language, but with the culture, the humor, and the rhythm of British life. And that is the kind of learning that truly stays with you. Confidence is one of the most important parts of learning a language, yet it is also one of the hardest to build. You might know the grammar rules, you might understand the vocabulary, and you might even follow conversations quite well. But when it comes to opening your mouth and speaking, something holds you back. You worry about making mistakes, about not sounding natural, or about not being understood. That is why stories like this are so valuable. because they do more than just teach language. They help you practice in a way that strengthens your confidence step by step. When you follow a relatable story, especially one about making bold life choices, you connect with it on a personal level. You see characters struggling with decisions, taking risks, and dealing with uncertainty. In many ways, that mirrors the journey of learning English itself. Every time you speak up in a new language, you are taking a small risk. You are stepping out of your comfort zone, and that is exactly what confidence is built on, the courage to keep trying, even when you are unsure. This story gives you that space. As you listen and read along, you are not only practicing English, you are also training yourself to stay calm and engaged in the face of challenge. You see how the characters push forward despite their doubts, and you are reminded that you can do the same with your learning. It is not about being perfect. It is about being brave enough to take part. Confidence grows when you allow yourself to try, and storytelling gives you the opportunity to practice without fear of judgment. Another reason this kind of story builds confidence is that it feels real. You are not reading about abstract situations that you will never face. You are hearing language used in moments that feel familiar, moments of choice, of change, of risk. When you recognize yourself in those moments, the English you are learning feels more relevant, more connected to your own life. That makes it easier to imagine yourself using the same phrases in your own conversations, and the more you imagine it, the more natural it becomes when you try it. Confidence also comes from repetition, and a story gives you repetition without boredom. Phrases and expressions appear naturally throughout the dialogue, and each time you encounter them, you understand them more deeply. First you hear them, then you see them in the subtitles, then you repeat them, and finally you recognize them when they come up again later in the story. Each time you are building a stronger connection, and with each connection your confidence grows. Even the act of following along with subtitles can build confidence. It reassures you that what you heard was correct, and it shows you the exact spelling and structure of the words. That confirmation gives you a little boost, a reminder that you are capable of understanding. Over time, those small boosts add up until you notice yourself listening without needing subtitles, speaking without hesitation, and even enjoying the challenge instead of fearing it. Most of all, confidence grows when learning feels meaningful. A story about bold life choices reminds you that learning English is not just about tests or textbooks. It is about opening doors, about creating new opportunities, and about taking your own chances in life. Each time you connect with a character who makes a difficult decision, you are reminded that you, too, can step forward, both in life and in language. That is the gift of this story, the chance to practice English in a way that builds not only skill, but also courage and the confidence to use your voice. One of the challenges many learners face is that their skills develop unevenly. Some people can read English very well but struggle to keep up when listening. Others can listen and understand but hesitate when it comes to speaking. And there are those who can speak confidently, but their vocabulary is limited because they don't read enough. This imbalance can feel frustrating because real communication requires all of these skills to work together. That is why having one tool that connects reading, listening, and speaking in a single experience is so powerful, and this is exactly what a story with subtitles offers. When you follow along with a story, the first thing you do is listen. You hear the natural flow of English, the way the words are pronounced, the rhythm of the sentences, and the tone of the speaker. This listening practice is different from listening to recordings in a textbook because it feels alive. It is not just words being read, it is words being lived. That immediately makes your brain more engaged and more alert. You are not only decoding sounds, You are interpreting emotions, actions, and intentions. At the same time, subtitles bring in the reading element. As you listen, you see the exact words on screen. This creates a direct link between sound and spelling, between what you hear and what you read. That link is incredibly important because English pronunciation and spelling do not always match perfectly. Seeing and hearing together helps you internalize patterns more effectively. For example, when you hear an expression spoken quickly, it may sound like a single word, but when you see it written, you recognize that it is actually 2 or 3 words blending together. That moment of clarity builds both your listening accuracy and your reading fluency. The third skill, speaking, comes into play when you decide to repeat or shadow the story. By copying the characters' lines, you practice pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm in a way that feels natural. You are not inventing sentences or worrying about grammar rules in the moment. Instead, you are focusing on how the words sound and how your mouth shapes them. Over time, this kind of practice helps you develop the muscle memory you need to speak smoothly and confidently. You move from thinking about each word individually to producing sentences that flow. The real beauty of this approach is that you are practicing all 3 skills together without even noticing. As you get drawn into the story, you stop thinking of it as separate exercises. You are simply experiencing language. You read, you listen, and you speak, all in one continuous process that mirrors how language is used in real life. In actual conversations, you are also doing these 3 things at once: listening to someone, reading their expressions or gestures, and speaking back in response. That is why practicing in this integrated way feels so effective. It prepares you for real communication. Another important part of this process is reinforcement. When you read a phrase, hear it spoken, and then repeat it aloud, you encounter it in 3 different ways. Each one reinforces the other, making the phrase stick in your memory far more firmly than if you had only read it or only heard it once. This is why stories with subtitles are such a complete learning tool. They don't just touch one skill, they strengthen all of them together. By the time you finish, you realize you have read dozens of new phrases, listened to them in context, and spoken them aloud, all within one experience. That combination builds confidence and fluency in a way that feels natural and enjoyable. That is the true power of connecting reading, listening, and speaking. It turns learning into a complete experience that prepares you for real communication. One of the most important things about learning a language is enjoyment. If the process feels boring, forced, or repetitive, it becomes difficult to stay motivated, no matter how determined you are. That is why authentic stories can make such a difference. They turn study into an experience, something you can look forward to instead of something you feel you must push through. When a story is designed carefully in line with B2 and C1 Sefer levels, it gives you the perfect balance, challenging enough to stretch your ability, yet clear and structured enough to help you succeed. At this level, you are already beyond the basics. You do not need every single word explained to you, but you do need material that matches your ability and pushes you gently forward. Stories built for B2 and C1 learners are written with this in mind. They include vocabulary that is new but not overwhelming, sentence structures that reflect natural English without being confusing, and expressions that appear in real life but are still accessible to someone working at this level. This makes the learning feel smooth and achievable instead of frustrating. Authenticity is also key. When a story is authentic, it does not sound like an exercise, it sounds like life. The dialogue flows the way people really speak, with interruptions, humor, emotions, and unplanned reactions. The descriptions use the kinds of words that people actually use when telling stories to each other. This authenticity makes learning enjoyable because it feels genuine. You are not reading a script that has been simplified to the point of sounding fake. You are engaging with something that feels alive and connected to the world you want to be a part of. Another reason stories at this level are enjoyable is that they are relatable. They often deal with themes of choice, change, relationships, and personal growth, themes that matter to most of us, no matter where we are from. When you see characters facing decisions or taking risks, you recognize something of yourself in them. That connection pulls you into the story and keeps you interested. And while you are interested, you are learning without even noticing how much effort you are putting in. What makes this approach even more powerful is the way it respects your level as a learner. It does not talk down to you, and it does not overwhelm you. It gives you the right kind of challenge, one that allows you to progress while still enjoying the process. That respect is important because when you feel that the material is designed for you, you are more likely to stay engaged and motivated. It feels like a partnership between the story and your own learning journey. Subtitles add another layer of enjoyment by giving you the support you need without interrupting the flow. You can listen and watch at the same time, catching every detail. When something is unclear, the subtitles are there to guide you, but they never take away from the natural sound of the language. Instead, they give you reassurance, a safety net that helps you keep going and enjoy the experience fully. Over time, as you continue with stories like these, you notice that your skills improve almost naturally. You remember phrases without memorizing them. You recognize vocabulary without drilling it. You begin to understand conversations more quickly, and you even start using expressions you picked up from the characters. All of this happens because you are enjoying the process, and when you enjoy learning, you learn more effectively. That is the real purpose of these stories, to make learning English something you can enjoy, while still pushing you forward at the right level, so that every moment feels both meaningful and rewarding. Thank you for joining the Brit Tales today. I hope this story gave you more than just words. It gave you the chance to experience English as it is really spoken. You've practiced listening, pronunciation, and vocabulary in one complete flow, supported by subtitles to guide you. Along the way, you've met authentic British English expressions that people use in everyday life, and through a relatable story of bold choices, you've built confidence in your own ability to use them too. Each tale is carefully designed to connect your reading, listening, and speaking skills while keeping the experience enjoyable and meaningful. And because these stories are written in line with B2 and C1 Sefer levels, every step you take brings you closer to fluency. Keep exploring, keep practicing, and remember, your English journey is a story worth telling.